Hi everybody, it's Susan from Sunrise Quilt Studio, and today's block is called Flying Shuttles. And here is the block. You can see it has a lot of pieces in it, but they're half square triangles and square units, so nothing too complicated. So I hope you'll stay with me and I'll show you how to make the Flying Shuttles block. Here are the pieces to make the Flying Shuttles block. For A, you're going to need 3 4.5-inch squares. For B, you'll need 12 2.5-inch squares. C is 2 3-inch squares. D is also 2 3-inch squares, and E is 2 3-inch squares. F would be 6 4-inch squares, and G is 12 2.5-inch squares. And on the F and the G, you're going to need to draw a diagonal line on the wrong side of the fabrics. So I'll adjust the camera and we'll get started making the Flying Shuttles block. The first step is to make square and square units with the A squares and the G squares. So we have 3 of these we need to make, and I'm going to start with one of the squares and a G square, and I'm going to place it so that the drawn line on the G square is going from the top middle of the A square and goes down to the right side. So it's going from middle to middle, side to side of that block, and I'm going to sew right on that drawn line. And then I'm going to turn it and sew another square on the opposite corner. So I need a square on each corner, and I can do 2 at a time. Well, I can do 2 corners, 2 opposite corners, before I need to trim and press. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Okay, now I'm going to trim off the outer corners, leaving a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, so here I have half of the square and a square unit done. So I'm going to press these triangles back and then sew a square on the 2 other corners. Okay, so here's one of the other corners. Okay, so here's the square and a square unit. So I need to make 3 of these. So I'm going to go ahead and finish the other 2, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, now we need to make half square triangles with the C, D, and E squares. So I have them here. Now you can do whatever you want to with the colors on these squares. You can make them all the same color or use maybe two colors. You know, rearrange that however you like it. So for the background squares or F squares, these should be also 3-inch squares. And we're going to just start with one set and put them right sides together and sew a 1/4 inch away from the drawn line on both sides of it. So we're just going to line up my 1/4 inch foot here and sew down both sides of that line. And I'm just going to swing it around and sew 1/4 inch away from it from the line on the other side. Okay, and this will make 2 half square triangles right here. So there we go. So I'm going to do that with all of the C, D, and E squares, and we'll have all the half square triangles done in no time. I'm going to chain piece these together to make things go a little faster. Okay, so now all these units are done and we need to sew them together into the block. Now we've got 2.5 inch squares and we have 4.5 inch squares, and they all have to go together. So one of the things about the fabrics that I am using in this block is that there are several directional pieces. We have these are directional, these are directional, these are directional, and these little orange pieces are directional. So if I want everything to go in a certain direction, I'm going to have to watch real carefully how I do that. So I'm going to start here. Here's one corner, and I'm going to lay this section here, and I'm going to be sewing these into 4 patches. So this is already done. This will be 1 4 patch, and then the next one I'm going to need an orange and this geometric and another orange there and a geometric here. So those 2 oranges are going the same direction, and there I have all of those pieces in the same direction. Now the next square and a square unit goes in the center, and then the last one goes here. Okay, so let's work on this section here. This one is going to need one of these. Actually, that one's going to go there. We're going to do this. That one's going to go here. And then I need this one here. Okay, so you can see those 2 are going the same way. And then over here, I need another one of those. And then we'll do the background or the little geometric squares. And then for this one, I need one of these blue ones. Okay. Then I have these 2 sections here. And that is going to start with this. And another one. I'm going to move these up So you probably won't be able to see everything, but you'll be able to see this row as I'm working on it. They're going to go this way. And then I need the orange. And then on this section, I need that. Those two and this one. Okay, now when you're making this block, look it over real carefully. Make sure everything is in the place that you want it to be. Now you don't have to have all of these different colors in here. You could use all one color. I split this up because I'm at the end of the layer cake and I just don't have enough of any one fabric left to make everything one color. So I think the only thing that would change the look of the pattern is if these were all different colors. These little geometrics I have in here, those should probably all be the same color, but these could be all different colors. You could match them up, like maybe this row all be one color and these one color. You know, use your imagination, mix it up however you want. So I'm making sure all of these little 2.5 inch squares are all going the same direction. My square and square units are in the same direction. And then I have all of these and all of those going in the same direction. So I'm doing good at this point. So I'm going to start sewing all of these into 4 patches. So I'll sew this together and that together, this and this, those and those. And then I'll sew it into rows, and then I'll sew the rows together. So this block is a little more complicated to put together, but once again, you're just putting squares together. So hopefully that will make it easier. So I'm going to adjust the camera back towards the sewing machine and get started sewing. Okay, so here's the first 4 patch, and let's see how that worked. And that turned out pretty good. Now you have points here that need to match, so these didn't quite match up, so I can redo those and get those to match up a little bit better. But I'm going to go ahead and lay this one out, and we'll get started over here. So at this point I don't have to match anything. It's just sewing a plain square to a triangle square. Okay, so here's a half square triangle. Okay, so I kept these 2 chained together, and I'm going to lay them right sides together. I'm going to go ahead and clip this so I can maneuver pieces a little bit better, but I'm going to poke a pin through that point and this point here and line those up. Make sure my pin is perpendicular there, and then repin it, and then sew these 2 sections together. Okay, I have one of the 4 patch units here, and I'm going to sew them together 2 pieces at a time here, and then I will sew those 2 sections together. And I'm going to chain these together. I'm going to leave that little chain in there. sew these two. Now you may have a different method of helping to keep everything aligned, and you know, just go ahead and do what works best for you. And I'm going to press these and leave them attached. You can see here I've got the chain still attached to these pieces like that, and I need to sew them like this and then sew this seam here, but I want to leave them attached while I am pressing so that I don't get them turned around. Okay, so here we have those all pressed, and I'm going to place them together, and I'm going to clip that thread at this point, that little chain, because I need to match these 2 points. So this point with this one. So I'm going to take a pin and put it through the point of this block and into the point of this one, and then line it up. And I have to nest this seam together, and then I want this pin to be perpendicular, so it looks like that. And once I get that all lined up, I'll remove the pin and then pin the 2 sections together, and then I'm going to sew. And then I'm going to watch that intersection where those threads cross, those seams cross there, and keep to the right hand side of that point. And then we'll see how this turned out. Okay, that one looks good. Okay, I'm going to press this seam open, which is another reason to go ahead and clip that little chain, because you won't be able to press it open if it's chained together still. And I'm doing that to relieve some of the bulk that's right here in this intersection, because you've got a lot of seams coming together right there at those points. Okay, so there it's pressed open, and then I'm going to lay it right back where it belongs in the block. And at this point I have one more to go, so I'm going to do those, and these have different colored half square triangles. So chaining also helps with that. It helps to keep them from getting out of order. Okay, I wanted to show you how I have all these laid out. So now I have all of these half square triangles and single squares sewn together into 4 patches. So now you see they're the same size as the square and square units. So now I can sew everything into rows and then sew all the rows together. But before I do that, I just want to make sure I have everything laid out the way I want it. And looks like it's all correct. Now I can sew all of these sections into rows, and then I'll sew all the rows together, and then the block will be done. So I'm going to sew the first 2 pieces of each row, which just looks sideways to you. I know I got the camera in a different space, but I'm going to sew those together and then add the last pieces, and then we'll have a completed block. Okay, I'm going to press and we'll look at the block. So here is the completed block. I'm really happy with the way that turned out. It was a little bit tricky to get everything laid out first, but I think that really helped, just to lay out all the pieces first and then sew all of these sections into 4 patches and then sew them into rows and then sew the rows together. So otherwise the piecing isn't difficult because, you know, just have square and a square units and half square triangles. So nothing complicated. It's just that there are a lot of pieces in this block and they need to go together a certain way. And then of course I complicated it on top of everything by using lots of directional fabrics. So if you don't want as much complication in your block as I did, avoid the directional fabric. So anyway, this is it. It's all done and I'm really happy with it. Okay, that is it for the Flying Shuttles block. I think it turned out really well. I'm happy with it. And it really wasn't too difficult, just laying out all the pieces and making sure everything's turned the right direction, and sewing all of these smaller pieces into 4-patch units helped a lot to get this block put together without any trouble. So consider that when you're making this block. And also think about different ways you can place the colors in your block. You can make all kinds of neat designs with this block, so I hope you will try it out. So if you like this video, please click that like button. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and click that notification bell so you'll be notified when the next video comes up. And in the meantime, I hope you're all staying safe and healthy, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. For more quilting ideas, click on the video links, and to keep up with my latest projects, click on the subscribe button. I hope to see you again soon.